Chapter 17. Meanwhile, back at the treehouse, while George Hale pleaded with George's dad to be excused from dinner, a pack of evil schemers was just outside the window, sneaking up to their treehouse. "We've got to create some kind of diversion while we unleash our sinful scheme," said Evil Hale. The villains looked around the treehouse for anything they could use. "What's this little thing?" said Evil George. He pressed the line on the back of the miniature Goosey Girl for 1,000. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot out of the tiny contraption, accidentally zapping Evil Sulu, who was tucked inside Evil Harold's shirt pocket. Immediately, Evil Sulu began to grow bigger and bigger until he leaped out of Evil Harold's pocket and fell to the floor with a giant thud. Evil Sulu was now the size of a full-grown sheepdog. The villains all smiled at one another as they watched Evil Sulu grow and snarl ferociously. "I think we found our diversion," said Evil George as he zapped Evil Sulu again. Chapter 18. Crash! Suddenly, Evil Sulu grew to the size of a giant monster. He jumped out of the treehouse and landed in George's backyard with a terrible thunderous crash. And seriously, how did not even push the way? It's implied that these lines here, they literally took a jump from that door and the line with the here with that explosion, but like the... "What was that?" cried George's dad. Everyone jumped up and dashed outside to get a better look at the horrible creature that towered over the house, snarling, roaring hideously. For some strange reason, George Hale's grandparents jumped up and dashed faster than they had moved in years. But nobody had really noticed because of that giant hamster thing. "What's going on?" cried Hale. "Those evil guys must have followed us back into our own reality somehow," whispered George. "We've got to stop them before they take over our world." Sulu crossed his master's way through the neighborhood, heading toward the big city, because, well, that's where giant monsters usually head. George ran inside and grabbed the 3D Hypno ring and the super pouches, which felt surprisingly empty, and whistled for crackers. And while the grown-ups were fussing and fretting over trivial things like broken fences, insurance policies, and property damage reports, George and Harold and Crackers flew up to save the world. I'm sorry, I just want to point out, this guy's literally tearing apart buildings. Thanks to this stupid Underpants story, people are literally dying because of this stupid hamster hypno ring, Goosey Girl for 1,000. I don't know which one's more to blame, but, and probably the people for the other reality. Anyway, Chapter 19, When Hamsters Attack.com. Soon the three friends soared over the center of the city. There they met up with their beloved pet Sulu, who was now a giant evil monster destroying everything in his path. "Well," said Harold, "it looks like you and I are going to have to drink that superpower juice so we can stop giant evil Sulu from wrecking the city." Harold," said George as he eyed the carton of the superpower juice suspiciously. "I'm so psyched," said Harold. "I've always wanted to have superpowers." Harold," said George again as he held the carton to his ear and shook it back and forth. "I hope I get Kung Fu grip and X-ray vision," said Harold. "That would be awesome." Harold," shouted George as he turned the superpower juice carton upside down. "There's nothing left." "What do you mean?" cried Harold. "There was like a third of the carton in there 20 minutes ago." "Well, it's gone now," said George. "It must have evaporated or something." Hold on, let me clear things up. I'm gonna clear up the confusion. The first third was used on Captain Underpants to defeat the giant dandelion Book 3. The second third was accidentally spilled on Miss Ribble's hair while she was a wicked wedgie woman at that time in Book 5. And then, most recently, their great-grandma and grandpa drank the last third because they cluelessly left it on the table. "No, this is not your fault." Anyway, the boys watched helplessly as giant evil Sulu continue trashing the city. "Well," said George, "I guess there's just one thing left to do." Hurriedly, the three friends flew to the house of their principal, Mr. Krupp. It was easy to find since it was the only one on Curmudgeon Boulevard that was covered in toilet paper. "Next time we gotta use single-ply toilet paper," said George. "We'll get better coverage." After a quick knock on the door and an even quicker snap of the fingers, Mr. Krupp transformed into the amazing Captain Underpants. And in no time at all, the world's greatest, baldest superhero was face-to-face with the world's biggest, baddest, bionic hamster. Chapter 20, The Grandfather Shock, Part 1, Flipperama. Back in the old days, incredible grandfathers was believed to be harmful, dangerous, and even immoral. But now it's fun for the whole family thanks to the science of Flipperama. Hamster havoc. Psh, 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 psh. Put your head on my boulder. Psh, 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 psh. That was quick. Anyway, Chapter 21, the anticlimactic chapter. The battle between man and beast was over. George Hale petted Sulu's giant face and breathed a sigh of relief. "He'll be okay," said George. "He just got knocked out." "Great," said Harold. "It looks like all of our problems are over." "Not so fast!" came a voice that came from somewhere on the lower right-hand corner of the next page. It was Evil George, along with Evil Harold, the ultra-evil Captain Blunderpants. The terrible trio had been busy working on their preposterous plight, which is just a fancy way of saying that they were busy robbing a bank. "Somebody's been messing with our giant attack hamster," said Evil Hill. "I think we need to teach those goody-goodies a lesson." "And I'm just the guy to do it," said Counter Underpants proudly. The mood shifted. Everyone stood back. The air crackled with tension. The showdown of the century was about to begin. Captain Underpants was soon engaged in a storied battle with his evil twin. Never before had our brave hero encountered an enemy who was so powerful. Pound for pound. Superpower for superpower. Captain Underpants was pitted against his equal. He had met his match. It was to be the ultimate smackdown. An all-out war. The brawl to end all brawls. The definitive clash between good and evil. A momentous confrontation in the most critical. Snap! George snapped his fingers, and suddenly the horrifyingly evil Captain Blunderpants transformed into a friendly elementary school principal. "Oh, man!" cried Evil George and Evil Harold. "We read your comic book back in Chapter 8, so Harold, did you think we wouldn't remember how to turn your evil supervillain back into a harmless principal?" George and Harold quickly found some rope and tied up Evil Harold, and nice Mr. Krupp. "We're taking you losers back to your own reality where you won't bother us ever again," said George. "All we have to do is de-hypnotize the shrink Sulu and our job will be done," said Harold. Now, before we continue, I don't know why nice Mr. Krupp is this stupid to be smiling when he's all tied up. But anyway, nothing could possibly go wrong now. "You know, you really shouldn't say things like that," said George. "Why?" said Harold. Chapter 22. Kaboom! Suddenly, a lightning flash, thunder crashed, and the rain came a tumbling down. "That's why!" said George. After the first few drops of rain hit Captain Underpants' puffy face, he began to transform. In a matter of seconds, he changed from a cosmic powerful superhero to an angry, annoyed elementary school principal. Unlike Wisely, the rain on the face thing was having the opposite effect on nice Mr. Krupp, transforming him once again into an arrogant, foul-tempered supervillain named Captain Blunderpants. Yep, when they get water over their heads, they turn to their bad selves. Evil George and Evil Harold father Evil smiled, and Captain Underpants snapped over and yelled out, trying to George and Harold quickly snapped their fingers again, but it was having no effect. It was raining too hard, and Mr. Krupp was getting annoyed. Because if you remember from Book 6, George and Harold cannot snap their fingers as soon as another drop of water hits their head, which is pretty much instantly they turn back. Anyway, "This is the dumbest dream I've ever had!" he shouted. "I'm gonna go home and get back into bed!" And with that, he turned and stormed off toward his soggy toilet paper-covered house. And that's the last we see of Captain Underpants. Like, seriously, this brief moment of him beating up Sulu, getting water in his head, and leaving, is the only time that we see our Captain Underpants in this story. Like, seriously, this is the only time, just these few brief chapters, the only time we see him. We don't see anything at the conclusion or intro or anything. Anyways, continue. "Looks like the tables have turned," Evil Harold snickered. "You got there for one yet." Quickly, George and Harold laced out the crackers back as the three full-on friends flew off towards their treehouse. "Don't just stand there!" cried Evil Harold towards his creepy cohorts. "Let's get him!" Chapter 23, 2 minutes later. Back in George's yard, our heroes searched furiously through their treehouse. "I found it!" cried George. "The shrinking bitch is us! All we have to do is shrink those evil losers and we'll save the world!" "Too late!" shouted Captain Blunderpants and grabbed George out like a short hole. "We'll take that shrinky thingy!" "I'm not sure how it works, but once I figure it out, I can think about 1,000,009 evil things to do with it!" Captain Blunderpants held George and Harold high into the air and snarled viciously. "Prepare to be pulverized!" "What the hell?" "No way to pickle bigger than Vinny, young fella!" shouted a familiar sounding voice from inside George's house. Chapter 24. Nobody messes with our grandbabies. Harold's grandpa and George's great-grandma stepped onto the back patio and confronted the big bully Captain Blunderpants. "You put those babies down or you'll get the flipping of your lifetime," said George's great-grandma. Captain Blunderpants laughed haughtily. "We're not gonna want you again, Skippy," said Harold's grandpa. Captain Blunderpants continued to tighten his grip on George and Harold. So the two octogenarians joined hands and gazed fiercely into each other's eyes and shouted, "Get your powers activate!" Quickly, they began spinning around and around. Faster and faster, the goldfish twirled until a tornado formed around them, tearing away their clothes and jewelry and sending patio furniture flying violently. Well, what happens if one of them get killed? They both lose their powers. Whatever. Suddenly, the twirling stopped, the tornado subsided, and the elderly twosome stood prowling in their underwear, huffing, puffing, fearlessly facing their foe. "Oh, that was fun. Let's do it again, Henry," said George's great-grandma. Laughed Harold's grandpa. "All right, my dear, but we gotta teach our silly Willie a lesson first." "All right, before we continue, you cannot be a kid and not be busting a gut right now." Anyway. "Oh, yeah," said George's great-grandma. "That young fella's got a hankering for a spanking." Harold's grandpa grabbed a couple of curtains from the kitchen window and tied them around their necks. "Not too tight, Henry," said George's great-grandma. With their capes in place, George and Harold's super grandparents approached Captain Blunderpants triumphantly. Alright, Sonny, Harold's grandpa, prepare to get your bucket whooped by Box Blade Great Granny Colonel.